The first thing Ethan Carter noticed when he walked into his house was the silence. Not the peaceful kind. It was the kind of silence that made a man realize something had already happened. He dropped his car keys onto the marble table and looked around. No music. No television. No sound from the kitchen. No Natalie. For 6 years, his wife had always been there. Even when she was angry. Even when she was exhausted. Even when she had every reason to stop waiting for him. But tonight there was nothing. Ethan checked his phone. 3 missed calls from his mother. 2 messages from his lawyer. And 1 message from an unknown number. He opened it. Your wife knows. His face tightened. Knows what? He immediately called Natalie. The call went straight to voicemail. He tried again. Blocked. For the first time that evening, Ethan felt something he had not felt in years. Fear. He walked upstairs. The bedroom was almost empty. Natalie's clothes were gone. Her jewelry box was gone. The framed wedding photograph was gone. Then he opened the nursery. His heart stopped. The crib was empty. The baby clothes were gone. The ultrasound photographs were gone. Even the small stuffed bear Ethan had bought 3 months earlier had disappeared. He stood there staring at the empty room. His phone rang. It was his mother. Where is she? Ethan swallowed. I thought she was with you. A long silence followed. Then Victoria Carter said something that made the blood drain from his face. Ethan, do you still have the papers I gave you? What papers? The divorce papers. He looked toward the empty nursery. I never gave them to her. Victoria became quiet. Then she whispered, then you have a much bigger problem than your marriage. The call ended. Ethan immediately drove to his office. He had just returned from Miami that afternoon. 7 days in a luxury resort with Sienna Blake. 7 days of champagne dinners, private beaches, expensive hotel suites, and not a single moment spent thinking seriously about his pregnant wife. He had told himself Natalie would understand. She always did. That was the problem. She always understood. She understood the late nights, the canceled dinners, the missed doctor appointments, the business trips, even the emotional distance that had slowly replaced their marriage. And when Sienna entered his life, Ethan convinced himself that what happened in Miami was not serious. It was just an escape, a mistake, something that would disappear if he ignored it long enough. But now Natalie was gone, and she had taken their newborn son with her. Ethan reached his office at 11:30. His assistant Marcus was waiting outside, whereas Natalie Marcus did not answer immediately. Then he placed a small envelope on the desk. She left this for you. Ethan stared at it. When 3 days ago. 3 days. Ethan looked up sharply. Why did nobody tell me? Marcus gave him a tired look. She told everyone not to contact you. Ethan opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No emotional speech. No accusations. No desperate plea. Just one sentence. You will understand everything when you discover what your father left behind. Ethan froze. His father had been dead for 2 years. He had not thought about Richard Carter in months. Then something fell from the envelope. A small brass key. Marcus looked at it. What is that? Ethan picked it up. I have no idea. A second piece of paper was hidden beneath it. There was an address. Not the family estate. Not a bank. Not one of the company offices. A private storage facility on the outskirts of the city. Ethan stared at the address. Why would my father leave something there? Marcus said nothing. Ethan grabbed his coat. We are going. Marcus hesitated. Sir, what? There is something else. Ethan turned. Marcus took a breath. Your wife was not alone when she left the hospital. Ethan stared at him. Who was with her? Marcus lowered his voice. Your father's old attorney, Daniel Ross. The name hit Ethan harder than expected. Daniel Ross had disappeared from the Carter family after Richard's death. Victoria had always said he was unstable. Richard had trusted him more than anyone. Ethan suddenly remembered something his father had said years ago. If you ever lose control of your life, do not trust the people standing closest to you. At the time, Ethan had laughed. Now he was not laughing. He walked toward the elevator. Marcus followed. Neither man noticed the black SUV parked across the street. Inside sat Natalie. She watched Ethan leave the building. Her newborn son was sleeping peacefully beside her. Daniel Ross sat in the driver's seat. Natalie looked at the building one last time. For 6 years, she had protected that man. She had defended him when people questioned his character. She had sacrificed her own career so he could build his company. She had stood beside him while strangers called them the perfect couple. And when she needed him most, he had chosen another woman. Natalie looked down at her sleeping son. She gently touched his tiny hand. I am sorry, you will never know the man I thought your father was. Daniel looked at her through the mirror. Are you ready? Natalie took a slow breath. Yes. Then she looked toward the Carter headquarters. But I am not going back to ask Ethan for anything. Daniel nodded. Good. Because your husband is not the person you should be afraid of. Natalie frowned. Then Daniel looked back at the building. Your mother-in-law. Natalie went still. Why? Daniel reached into the glove compartment and removed a sealed black folder. Because Richard Carter spent the final 6 months of his life investigating her. And before he died, he transferred everything he found into your name. Natalie stared at the folder. She had no idea what was inside. But she knew one thing. Her marriage had not simply fallen apart. Someone had been preparing for this moment long before she gave birth. And if Daniel was telling the truth, the affair with Sienna was only the smallest part of the story. The real betrayal had been waiting for her all along. The black SUV disappeared into the night. Natalie did not look back. For the first time since she had married Ethan Carter, she was leaving without wondering whether he would come after her. That realization should have hurt. Instead, it made her breathe easier. Daniel drove toward the private estate where Natalie's father had lived for decades. Natalie had not spoken to her father in almost 9 years. She had walked away from that family after marrying Ethan. Her father had warned her. He told her Ethan was ambitious. He told her success had already become more important to him than people. Natalie had refused to listen. She thought her father simply hated the idea of losing control over his daughter. Now she was beginning to wonder if he had seen something she had been too in love to notice. Daniel broke the silence. There is something you need to know before we arrive. Natalie looked at him. What, your father never stopped watching the Carter family? Natalie frowned. My father, yes. Daniel handed her the black folder. He left instructions with me. If Richard died unexpectedly, I was supposed to deliver this to you. Why me? Because you were the only person outside the Carter family he trusted. Natalie slowly opened the folder. The first document was dated 8 months before Richard's death. It was a financial report. She recognized the company names immediately. Carter Holdings, several subsidiaries, several private investment entities, and one company she had never seen before, Blue Harbor Consulting. Natalie stared at the page. I do not remember this company. You should not. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. It was created after you stopped working for Carter Holdings. Natalie turned another page. The company had received millions of dollars from Carter Holdings. Then the money had moved through several other companies before disappearing into private accounts. Who owns Blue Harbor? Daniel did not answer immediately. That is what Richard was trying to find out. Natalie felt a chill. And did he? Yes. She looked up. Who? Daniel stopped the car outside the estate. Then he turned toward her. Your mother-in-law. Natalie closed her eyes. For years, Victoria Carter had treated her like an outsider. She had never openly insulted Natalie. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she had smiled. She had offered advice. She had corrected the way Natalie dressed, the way she spoke, the way she handled family events. And every time Ethan defended his mother, you know how she is. She means well. Natalie had believed him. Now every memory felt different. Daniel opened his door. Come inside. Your father is waiting. Natalie froze. My father? Daniel looked at her. Not your biological father. His lawyer. William Carter. Richard's younger brother. Natalie stared at him. She had never met him. At least not personally. William had been estranged from the family for years. Why would he be waiting for me? Because Richard left something else. Inside the estate, the lights were low. A man in his 70s stood near the fireplace. His expression was serious. Natalie recognized the eyes immediately. They were the same eyes as Richard's. William Carter stepped forward. Natalie, she did not move. How did you know I was coming? Richard told me you would come when you were finally ready to stop protecting Ethan. Her throat tightened. I am not protecting him anymore. William nodded. Good. Because protecting him nearly cost you everything. Natalie looked down at her son. William approached carefully. May I see him? Natalie hesitated. Then she nodded. William looked into the bassinet. For several seconds he said nothing. Then his expression changed. He looks like Richard. Natalie smiled faintly. Everyone says that. William looked at her. Your husband has no idea what his father left for you. Natalie sat down. Then tell me. William placed a thick file on the table. Richard believed Victoria was moving money out of Carter Holdings. But he could not prove it. Why not? Because every transaction was approved through Ethan. Natalie stared at him. Ethan, yes. But William leaned forward. That does not mean Ethan created them. Natalie remained silent. Richard believed someone was using your husband as a shield. She remembered the years Ethan had spent working late. The endless meetings. The travel. The strange documents he sometimes asked her to sign. Suddenly something clicked. He never read them. Natalie whispered. What, Ethan never read the financial reports I used to prepare for him? William nodded. Exactly. He trusted the wrong people. Natalie looked at the documents again. Then why did Ethan try to make me sign the divorce papers? William exchanged a glance with Daniel. Because the divorce was not about ending the marriage. Natalie waited. William opened another folder. This one contained a copy of the prenuptial agreement. Then a revised version. Then another. Natalie scanned the pages. Her name was everywhere. Her investment interests. Her family trust. Her ownership rights. And then she saw the clause. Her hands became cold. This says I assume liability for certain Carter Holdings debts. Daniel nodded. That clause was inserted 3 months ago. Natalie looked up. I never signed this. Exactly. William pushed another document toward her. A digital signature verification. Someone had copied your signature. Natalie felt her stomach turn. Who we do not know yet. But we know when it happened. When 3 weeks before you went into labor. Natalie looked at the date. That was the same week Ethan had started spending more time with Sienna. The same week he had begun telling Natalie she needed to rest. The same week he had asked her not to worry about company paperwork. She suddenly remembered a conversation. Ethan had walked into their bedroom, carrying a folder. Just sign these when you have time. What are they? Routine company documents. She had trusted him. She had placed them on her desk. But she never signed them. Natalie looked at Daniel. Could they have taken my signature from something else? Yes. Daniel opened another file. Your old employment records. Natalie stared at the page. There were scanned copies of documents she had signed years ago. Employment contracts. Investment forms. Bank authorizations. Her signature had been copied from those documents. She slowly sat back. So someone forged my signature. Yes. And tried to make me responsible for the company debt. Yes. Natalie looked at her son. Then the divorce would have removed me from the company. William nodded. And left you holding the liabilities. A long silence filled the room. Natalie suddenly understood the true purpose of everything. Ethan did not need her to sign the divorce because he wanted freedom. He needed her signature because the company was becoming dangerous. She looked at Daniel. How much? He hesitated. Approximately $80 million. Natalie's face went pale. And that was only the debt we know about. The room seemed to shrink. For 6 years, she had believed her marriage was failing because Ethan stopped loving her. Now she understood something worse. Her husband had been preparing to walk away while leaving her standing in the middle of a financial disaster. Daniel closed the folder. There is one more thing. Natalie looked at him. What? Richard discovered a transfer made 2 days before his death. A large amount of money was moved into an account connected to a foreign trust. Whose account? Daniel looked directly at her. Yours. Natalie felt the world stop. Mine. The account was opened using your identity. But you never knew about it. She shook her head. No. Daniel nodded. Richard knew. That is why he started investigating. Natalie looked toward the sleeping baby. Then she whispered, why would someone put millions into an account in my name? William answered quietly. Because when the money was discovered, everyone would believe you stole it. Natalie closed her eyes. The betrayal was no longer a marriage problem. It was a trap. A carefully constructed trap that had been waiting for years. And she had almost walked directly into it. Then Daniel's phone rang. He looked at the screen. His expression changed. Who is it? Daniel answered. He listened for only a few seconds. Then he stood. We have a problem. Natalie stood too. What happened? Daniel ended the call. Ethan just discovered that you are at this estate. Natalie stared at him. How? Daniel looked toward the window. Because someone inside this house told him. Natalie turned slowly. There were only 4 people in the room. Her, Daniel, William, and the housekeeper standing silently near the doorway. The woman looked frightened. Then she whispered, I am sorry. I had no choice. Natalie felt a cold wave move through her. Who forced you? The housekeeper looked toward the window. Then she said one name. Victoria. Victoria. The name remained in the room long after the housekeeper stopped speaking. Natalie looked at the woman. What did she tell you to do? The housekeeper lowered her eyes. She asked me to tell her if you came here. Did she say why? She said you were dangerous. Natalie almost laughed. Dangerous? After everything that had happened, that word sounded absurd. Daniel stepped closer. Did she threaten you? The woman nodded. She said she would fire me. Then she said something else. What she said? If I refused, she would make sure my husband lost his job too. William looked toward the window. Victoria knew we were investigating. Daniel nodded. She has known for longer than we thought. Natalie looked at the sleeping baby. Then we have to assume she knows about everything. Daniel answered quietly. She probably knows more than we do. Suddenly headlights appeared beyond the estate gates. Several black vehicles stopped outside. William walked toward the window. Victoria did not come herself. There were lawyers, 2 security teams, and Ethan. Natalie felt her chest tighten. Why is he here? Daniel looked at her. Because he finally understands that you are not coming back. The front door opened. Ethan entered the house. His expensive suit was wrinkled. His face looked exhausted. He had spent the entire night trying to contact Natalie. She had ignored every call. He looked at her, then at the baby. For several seconds he said nothing. Finally he whispered, "You took my son." Natalie stared at him. "No. I took my son away from a situation where he was not safe." Ethan stepped forward. "You could have called me." "I did. You blocked me. After you ignored 27 calls while you were in Miami." Ethan looked away. Sienna was not supposed to become serious. Natalie almost smiled. "You still think this is about Sienna?" Ethan looked confused. "Is it not?" "No." Natalie stood. "It is about everything you did before Miami. Everything you signed without reading. Everything you allowed your mother to control. And everything you expected me to sacrifice because you believed I would always stay." Ethan stared at her. "What did my mother do?" Natalie looked at Daniel. He opened the black folder. "Your mother created companies using money from Carter Holdings." Ethan shook his head. "That is impossible." Daniel placed several documents on the table. "Read them." Ethan did. His expression changed. Blue Harbor Consulting. He had seen the company before. It had been listed as a strategic consulting partner, but he had never personally dealt with it. "Who owns it?" Daniel answered. "Your mother." Ethan looked up sharply. "No, she would never do that." Natalie watched him carefully. "That is what I said about you for 6 years." Ethan looked at her. "What I kept believing you could not hurt me. Until you did." The words hit him harder than any accusation. He sat down. His hands trembled slightly. "How much money?" Daniel answered. "At least $80 million in liabilities." Ethan stared at the documents. Then he shook his head. "I never approved these." Daniel pointed toward the signatures. "Your credentials did." Ethan looked at Natalie. "Someone used my access." Natalie nodded. "We know." Ethan seemed surprised. "Then you believe me, I believe someone used you." "That is not the same thing." Ethan lowered his eyes. For the first time, he looked less like the powerful CEO everyone knew. He looked like a man who had suddenly realized he had not been in control of his own life for years. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen. "Victoria." He answered. "Mother." Her voice came through sharply. "Where are you at the estate?" "Who told you to go there?" Ethan frowned. "Why does that matter? Because you need to leave immediately." "Why silence?" Then Victoria said something that made Ethan stand. "Your wife has stolen company documents." Ethan looked at Natalie. "She has not stolen anything. You do not know what she has done." "Mother, stop. Listen to me. You are making a mistake." Ethan looked toward Daniel. "What mistake?" Victoria hesitated. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. "Richard never trusted you." Ethan froze. "What did you say?" "Your father knew you were weak." The call ended. Ethan slowly lowered the phone. Natalie saw the expression on his face. "What did she say?" Ethan looked at her. "She said my father never trusted me." Daniel exchanged a glance with William. Then Daniel walked to a locked cabinet. He removed a second folder. Ethan watched him. "What is that?" "Something Richard left for you." Daniel placed it on the table. Ethan did not touch it. "Why would my father leave something for me?" "Because he knew you would eventually discover the truth." Ethan opened the folder. The first page contained a handwritten letter. His father's handwriting. Ethan read silently. Then his face changed. Natalie watched him carefully. "What does it say?" Ethan swallowed. "My father wrote that he believed someone inside the family was using me." Daniel nodded. "Keep reading." Ethan turned the page. His hands began shaking. Richard had documented conversations, meetings, transfers, dates, names, and one name appeared more than any other. Victoria Carter. Ethan stared at it. "No." He turned another page. "No." He repeated it. "My mother would never do this." Daniel remained calm. "Your father thought she already had." Ethan slammed the folder shut. "This is not enough." Natalie looked at him. "Then prove it." Ethan stared at her. "How? Investigate her yourself. For once, stop trusting people because they are family." Ethan looked down. Then his phone rang again. This time it was his chief financial officer. He answered. What the CFO sounded terrified. "Sir, you need to come to the office immediately." "Why? Federal investigators are here." Ethan went completely still. "What investigators? They have a warrant." For what? The CFO hesitated. For financial fraud. Ethan looked at Natalie. The warrant lists your name as a primary beneficiary of several accounts. Natalie felt cold. They are blaming me. Daniel shook his head. No. Someone wants them to believe it is you. Ethan asked the CFO one final question. Who contacted them? The CFO whispered. Your mother. The line went dead. Ethan stood there unable to speak. His entire face had lost its color. Natalie picked up her son. Daniel stepped toward her. We need to leave now. We're somewhere Victoria cannot reach you. Natalie nodded. But before she walked away, Ethan stopped her. Natalie. She turned. I know I do not deserve your help. No, you do not. But if my mother is behind this, I need to know why. Natalie looked at him for several seconds. Then she said quietly, You do not need me to save you, Ethan. You need to decide whether you are finally willing to save yourself. She walked past him. Ethan remained standing in the center of the room. For years he had believed power meant controlling everyone around him. Now he was beginning to understand the truth. He had never controlled anything. Not his marriage. Not his company. Not his family. And perhaps not even the woman he had trusted most. Natalie reached the front door. Daniel followed. Then a loud crash came from upstairs. Everyone turned. William ran toward the staircase. Something had broken inside the study. Seconds later he shouted, Natalie. She rushed upstairs. The locked study door was open. The cabinet containing Richard's original files had been forced open. Documents were scattered across the floor. And one folder was missing. Daniel looked around. What was in that folder? William picked up an empty file sleeve. Everything Richard found about Victoria. Natalie stared at the empty cabinet. She understood immediately. Someone had entered the house before them. Someone knew exactly what they were looking for. Then she noticed something on the floor. A small silver button. She picked it up. Ethan stared at it. That is from my mother's coat. Silence. Natalie looked toward the window. Victoria had not sent lawyers to the estate to negotiate. She had sent them to distract everyone, while someone else came inside and stole the evidence. Daniel looked at Natalie. We are running out of time. Natalie closed her fingers around the silver button. Then she said something that made Ethan look at her differently. No, we are not running out of time. We finally know who is afraid. Natalie closed her fingers around the silver button. For the first time that night, she was not afraid. She was angry. Not the kind of anger that made a person scream. The kind that made every thought suddenly become clear. Someone had entered the estate. Someone had known exactly where Richard's evidence was hidden. And someone had known that Natalie would eventually come looking for it. Daniel picked up the broken lock. This was not done by someone searching randomly. William nodded. They knew what they wanted. Ethan stared at the empty cabinet. My mother has the missing folder. Natalie looked at him. Maybe. Ethan turned toward her. What do you mean? If Victoria wanted the evidence destroyed, she would have taken everything. She did not. Natalie pointed toward the shelves. Only one folder is missing. Ethan frowned. Then what is she looking for? Natalie looked at Daniel. What was in that folder? Daniel hesitated. The one piece of evidence Richard never copied. What evidence? Daniel lowered his voice. A recording. Ethan stepped closer. Of what? A conversation between your mother and someone else, who Richard never identified the second person. Natalie looked at the silver button in her hand. Then perhaps we should stop asking who stole the recording and start asking who was afraid of being heard. Daniel nodded. But before anyone could say more, the house lights went out. The entire estate disappeared into darkness. Natalie instinctively pulled her son closer. Ethan reached for his phone. Stay here. Natalie shook her head. No. A faint sound came from downstairs. A door closing. Then footsteps. Someone was still inside the house. Daniel whispered. Everyone stay together. They moved slowly down the staircase. The emergency lights flickered on. The front door was open. Cold air moved through the hallway. William looked toward the entrance. They are gone. Daniel walked outside. A black vehicle was disappearing down the road. Ethan started toward it. Do not. Natalie grabbed his arm. He looked at her. They want you to chase them. Why? Because if you leave, they can search the house again. Ethan stopped. Natalie looked at Daniel. Check the study again. Daniel nodded. They returned upstairs. This time Natalie examined every shelf, every drawer, every cabinet. Then she noticed something strange. The missing folder had left a clean rectangle of dust on the shelf. But beside it was another space. Someone had removed a second object. Natalie looked at William. What else was here? William thought for a moment. A small metal box. Where is it now? He looked around. I do not know. Daniel suddenly moved toward the fireplace. He touched the stone panel behind it. It opened. Inside was a narrow compartment. Empty. Natalie stared. Someone had already found it. Daniel looked disturbed. That box contained the original recording. Then what did they steal? William answered. The proof that the recording existed. Natalie felt a chill. So Victoria now knows what Richard left behind. Daniel nodded. And she knows we know. Ethan walked to the window. His phone rang again. This time he did not answer immediately. The number was private. Natalie looked at him. Answer it. Ethan pressed the button. Hello, a distorted voice spoke. You should have stayed out of this. Ethan froze. Who are you? The voice laughed softly. You really do not recognize me. Ethan looked toward Natalie. The voice continued. Your father did. Ethan tightened his grip on the phone. What do you want? The answer came instantly. Your wife. Natalie stared at Ethan. The voice continued. Bring her to the old marina tomorrow morning. Come alone. And bring the baby. Ethan immediately shouted. No. The line went dead. Natalie felt her stomach turn. Daniel took the phone from Ethan. They want to control you through her. Ethan looked at Natalie. I will not let them touch you. Natalie gave him a cold look. You already did. Ethan lowered his eyes. She was right. He had not physically harmed her. But he had left her alone when she needed him most. He had chosen another woman. He had trusted his mother over his wife. And now he wanted to protect Natalie only because he had finally realized what he could lose. Daniel stepped between them. We are not going to the marina. Ethan looked at him. Then what do? We give them what they expect. Natalie understood. You want them to think we are going. Exactly. Daniel opened his laptop. Within minutes, he accessed an old security system connected to the Carter estate. There were cameras around the property. Most had been disabled. But one camera had remained active. It faced the driveway. Daniel rewound the footage. A black vehicle appeared. A man stepped out. He wore a dark jacket. His face was hidden. Then another person entered the estate. A woman. Natalie leaned closer. She recognized the walk immediately. Victoria. But Daniel paused the footage. Look at the man. Ethan stared. He knows him. Who? Ethan's face became pale. He used to work for my father. William stepped closer. Name? Ethan shook his head. I thought he died. Daniel stared at the screen. He did not die. He disappeared. What was his name? Ethan swallowed. Marcus Hale. Natalie looked at Daniel. Who is Marcus Hale? Richard's former chief security officer. William frowned. Why would he help Victoria? Daniel rewound the footage again. Marcus was not carrying anything when he entered. But when he left, he had a small metal box. The recording. Natalie looked at Ethan. You said he worked for your father. Yes. Then he knows where Richard kept everything. Daniel nodded. And he may know something else. What? The identity of the person Richard was investigating. Ethan stared at the frozen image. Who was my father investigating? Daniel looked at him. We do not know. But Marcus might. The next morning, Natalie refused to leave the estate. She stayed inside with Daniel and William while Ethan went to his office. He needed to understand what was happening inside Carter Holdings. When he arrived, the building was surrounded by investigators. Employees whispered as he walked through the lobby. Some looked at him with sympathy. Others looked at him with suspicion. His CFO approached him. Sir, what? There is another problem. Ethan closed his eyes. What now? Someone transferred $12 million from a company reserve account last night. When after midnight, Ethan stared at him. Who authorized it? The CFO handed him a printed record. Your credentials. Ethan felt his blood run cold. I was not here. We know. Then who accessed my account? The CFO hesitated. The login came from your home. Ethan immediately thought of Victoria. But then he remembered something. The housekeeper. He called Natalie. No answer. He called Daniel. No answer. Then his phone received a message. You should have listened. Attached was a photograph. Natalie standing outside the estate. And behind her was a man watching from across the road. Marcus Hale. Ethan immediately called Daniel again. This time Daniel answered. What happened? Ethan sent him the photograph. Daniel went silent. Where did you get this? Someone sent it to me. Daniel's voice changed. Ethan, do not bring Natalie back to the estate. Why? Because Marcus is not working for Victoria. Ethan froze. Then who? Daniel answered quietly. Richard. Ethan stared at the phone. That is impossible. Richard is dead. I know. Then Daniel said the words that would change everything. But Marcus just sent me a message. Ethan waited. Daniel continued. He says Richard is not the only person who knew about the account. Ethan's voice dropped. Who else? Daniel looked at the message again. Then he said Natalie's father. Ethan went completely still. Natalie's father had been dead for years. But if Richard and her father had been working together, then the conspiracy had started long before Ethan and Natalie ever met. And suddenly the biggest question was no longer who betrayed Natalie. It was this. Why had two powerful men spent years preparing for a betrayal that had not happened, yet Natalie was about to find out? But the answer would force her to question something even more painful. Whether her marriage to Ethan had ever been an accident at all. Natalie stood completely still. Whether her marriage to Ethan had ever been an accident at all. The question stayed in her mind long after Daniel finished speaking. She looked at him. What do you mean by that? Daniel did not answer immediately. Instead, he closed the laptop. Your marriage may have been connected to your father's investigation. Natalie shook her head. No, that is impossible. You have to understand what Richard discovered. Daniel opened another file. Before you met Ethan, your father and Richard Carter were already investigating the same financial network. Natalie stared at him. My father never told me. Because he wanted to protect you. Protect me from what? From the Carter family. Natalie looked away. For years she had believed her father simply disapproved of Ethan. Now she was beginning to wonder whether every argument they had ever shared had been built around a truth she had never been allowed to know. Daniel continued. Your father believed someone was using powerful families to move money through private companies. Richard discovered the same network through Carter Holdings. They eventually realized their investigations were connected. Natalie felt her throat tighten. So they worked together. Yes. How long? Almost 12 years. Natalie sat down. 12 years. That meant her father had been investigating the Carter family before she had even met Ethan. She remembered the first time Ethan had come to her father's house. Her father had barely spoken. He had looked at Ethan for several seconds and then told Natalie. They needed to talk privately. She had been furious. She had accused her father of judging Ethan without knowing him. Now the memory felt different. What did my father know about Ethan? Daniel looked at her carefully. He knew Ethan was being watched. By whom? The people behind the financial network. Natalie stared at him. Then why did my father let me marry him? Daniel lowered his voice. Because he believed Ethan was not part of it. Natalie closed her eyes. So my father trusted him. At first. What changed? Richard discovered that someone inside the Carter family was preparing to use Ethan. Natalie looked at the documents. And he thought that person was Victoria. Yes. But there was another problem. What Richard could not prove whether Victoria was the mastermind or simply working for someone else. Natalie suddenly remembered the message from the unknown number. Your wife knows. She had assumed it referred to the affair. Now she understood. It may have referred to something much bigger. Daniel's phone rang. He answered. Hello, a man's voice spoke quickly. I need to speak with Natalie. Who is this? Marcus Hale. Daniel looked at Natalie. She nodded. Put him on speaker. Marcus spoke. You need to leave the estate immediately. Natalie asked why. Because Victoria knows where you are. We already know. No, you do not. She is not coming for the documents. Natalie frowned. Then what does she want you? Why? Because she believes you have something your father never gave Richard. Natalie looked at Daniel. Protect the network. Judges. Bankers. Executives. Lawyers. Politicians. Natalie felt her stomach turn. How did my father get it? Marcus said quietly. He created it. Daniel looked at Natalie. Your father was not only investigating the network. He had infiltrated it. Natalie could barely breathe. Her father had always been a quiet man. He had owned a small investment company. He had spent most evenings at home. At least that was what Natalie had believed. Why did he never tell me? Because knowing would have made you a target. Marcus continued. He protected you by making you believe he was angry about your marriage. Natalie felt tears in her eyes. All those years. All those arguments. All those times she had accused her father of trying to control her. He had actually been trying to keep her alive. Then Marcus said something else. Church. They were smiling. Young. Happy. Unaware. The second photograph showed Victoria speaking with a man outside the church. Natalie leaned closer. She recognized him. That is Marcus. Daniel shook his head. No. It was someone else. Someone who looked almost identical from a distance. Natalie opened the next file. It was a scanned document. Her name appeared at the top. Then Ethan's. Then the name of a company she had never heard before. Carter Legacy Trust. Natalie's eyes widened. What is this? Daniel read the document. Then he looked at her. This was created the week before your wedding. What does it do? It transfers control of certain assets to the surviving spouse if the primary shareholder becomes legally incapacitated. Natalie frowned. Whose assets? Daniel did not answer. He opened the final page. Richard Carter. Natalie stared. So if Richard died, you would eventually gain control of assets he placed into the trust. Natalie shook her head. But Richard had 2 sons. Why me? Daniel looked at her. Because Richard did not trust either of them. Ethan had never known. Victoria had never known. Before she could respond, Ethan continued. And the money inside it was transferred this morning. How much? Ethan swallowed. $24 million. Natalie stared at him. I never touched that account. I know. Then why are you here? Because someone wants you arrested before you can discover the truth. Daniel looked toward the window. Too late. Outside, several vehicles were approaching the estate. Police cars. Federal agents. And behind them a black SUV. Marcus Hale stepped out. But he was not alone. Victoria Carter stood beside him. And in her hand was the missing recording. Natalie looked at the screen. Then at the woman outside. Victoria raised the recording toward the window. She smiled. Not like a mother who had lost control, but like someone who had finally won. Then her lips moved. Natalie could not hear her, but she understood the words. You should have stayed out of my family. For several seconds nobody moved. Victoria stood outside the estate holding the missing recording in one hand. Federal agents surrounded her. Marcus Hale stood beside her. And Ethan was standing behind Natalie as if he finally understood that the woman he had spent his entire life defending might be the person who had destroyed everything around him. Natalie looked at Daniel. What do we do? Daniel did not look away from Victoria. We do not run. Natalie frowned. Why not? Because running is exactly what they want. He pointed toward the front entrance. They want the investigators to see you leaving with $24 million connected to an account in your name. Natalie understood immediately. They were building the final picture. Natalie was the perfect suspect. A woman involved in financial fraud. A secret account. Millions transferred under her identity. A powerful company collapsing. A dead father. A missing recording. And now she was standing inside a private estate with the one man who could supposedly prove her innocence. Everything looked wrong. Daniel continued. If you leave now, they will arrest you. Natalie looked at Ethan. Then what? We make them come inside. The front door opened. Federal agents entered with weapons drawn. Everyone remain where you are. Natalie raised both hands. I am Natalie Carter. One agent stepped forward. Mrs. Carter, we need to ask you some questions. Daniel immediately interrupted. You have a warrant. The agent handed him a document. Yes, for financial fraud and money laundering. Natalie looked at the papers. Her name appeared again and again. The account, the transfers, the transactions. Everything pointed toward her. One agent approached. You are not under arrest yet, but you need to come with us. Natalie looked around the room. Then she smiled. No. The agent looked surprised. Excuse me, you are looking for evidence. Natalie pointed toward the table. It is right there. Daniel understood. He opened his laptop. The screen showed the memory card. The evidence Richard had hidden. The agent stepped closer. What is that? The truth? Victoria suddenly spoke from outside. Do not believe her. Everyone turned. Victoria walked inside. She looked perfectly calm. Her lawyers followed behind her. She looked at Natalie. You have been manipulating my family for years. Natalie almost laughed. You really came here to say that? Victoria smiled. I came here to protect my son. Ethan stared at her. From what? Victoria looked at him. From her. Ethan shook his head. Mother, do not. Victoria stepped closer. You have no idea what she has done. Ethan answered quietly. Then tell me. Victoria looked at him. I tried to warn you. About Natalie, about everyone. Ethan stared at her. You told me to divorce my wife. Because I knew she was dangerous. You told me to leave her with the debt. Victoria's expression changed. For the first time, the confidence disappeared. Ethan continued. You created Blue Harbor. Victoria said nothing. You used my credentials. Nothing. You opened accounts in Natalie's name. Victoria looked toward the federal agents. This is absurd. Ethan turned toward the investigators. Ask her about Marcus Hale. Everyone looked at Marcus. The former security chief remained silent. One agent approached him. Mr. Hale. Marcus did not respond. The agent repeated the question. Were you employed by Richard Carter? Yes. Are you currently employed by Victoria Carter? No. Victoria turned sharply. What? Marcus looked at her. I never worked for you. Victoria's face went pale. Then why were you with her? Marcus answered. Because she asked me to retrieve the recording. Victoria stepped backward. You are lying. Marcus looked at Natalie. I have been protecting her since the night Richard died. Natalie stared at him. Why did you never tell me? Because your father ordered me not to. Victoria suddenly laughed. Your father? She looked at Natalie. You really believed your father was protecting you? Natalie felt her stomach tighten. What do you mean? Victoria looked toward Daniel. Ask him. Daniel remained silent. Victoria continued. Ask Daniel what happened the night your father died. Natalie turned to Daniel. Daniel. He did not answer. What happened? Daniel looked down. Victoria smiled. There it is. You see, even he has secrets. Natalie stepped toward Daniel. Tell me. Daniel finally spoke. Your father was not alone when he died. Natalie's breath caught. Who was with him? Daniel looked at Marcus. Then at Victoria. Then back at Natalie. Richard called me that night. He said he had discovered who was behind the network. Who? Daniel swallowed. He said it was someone none of us would suspect. Natalie waited. Then he died before he could tell me the name. Victoria interrupted. Because your father killed him. The room went silent. Natalie stared at her. What? Victoria pointed toward Daniel. Richard had evidence that your father was stealing money from the same network he claimed to be investigating. Natalie shook her head. No. Victoria smiled. You never knew your father. You only knew the version he wanted you to see. Natalie looked at Daniel. Is that true? Daniel hesitated. That hesitation was enough to hurt. Natalie stepped back. Daniel, tell me the truth. He finally nodded. Your father did take money. Natalie felt as if the floor disappeared. Why? Because he believed he could use the money to expose the network. Natalie stared at him. That makes no sense. It was the only way he could get close to the people controlling it. Victoria laughed. And you believed him? Daniel looked at her. I believed Richard. Victoria shook her head. You all did. She turned toward Ethan. Even your father. Ethan looked devastated. Mother. Stop. Victoria looked at him. You want the truth? Then hear it. Your father and Natalie's father were partners. They created the Carter Legacy Trust together. They intended to destroy the network. But then one of them became greedy. Natalie looked at Daniel. Which one? Daniel said nothing. Victoria answered. Your father. Natalie felt tears fill her eyes. No. Richard would never. Victoria took a step closer. Then why did he leave everything to you? Natalie could not answer. Victoria continued. Because he knew your father had stolen millions. He knew the investigation would eventually expose him. And he needed someone outside both families to inherit the evidence. You. Natalie shook her head. You are lying. Victoria smiled. Then ask Daniel about the night your father died. Natalie turned toward him. Tell me. Daniel looked exhausted. He did steal the money. But he did not keep it. Where did it go? Daniel looked at Ethan. It went into a protection fund. For people your father had helped escape the network. Natalie stared. Then why was it in my name? Because your father trusted you. Victoria suddenly shouted. Enough. She turned toward the agents. You cannot believe this woman. She is the one with $24 million. An agent stepped toward Natalie. Mrs. Carter, we need to take you into custody until the account can be investigated. Ethan immediately stepped forward. No. The agent raised a hand. Sir, move aside. Ethan looked at Natalie. Then he looked at his mother. Something changed in his expression. He finally made his choice. You are not taking her. The agent warned him. Mr. Carter. Ethan reached into his coat. Natalie froze. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out his phone. I recorded every conversation I had with my mother this week. Victoria went pale. Ethan continued, including the call where she told me to leave Natalie with the debt. The room went silent. Victoria whispered, You would betray your own mother. Ethan looked at her. No, you betrayed me first. He played the recording. Victoria's voice filled the room. Make sure Natalie signs the divorce agreement. If she refuses, move the money into her account. Ethan had recorded everything. Natalie looked at him. Why did you record her? Because I finally realized she was lying. Victoria stared at her son. Ethan continued. There is another recording. One from yesterday. Victoria had asked someone to move $24 million into Natalie's account. The investigator immediately stepped toward Victoria. Where is the money now? Victoria said nothing. The agent repeated the question. Where is the money? Victoria looked at Marcus. Marcus looked away. Then Victoria looked at Ethan. And for the first time, she looked afraid. She whispered one sentence. You have no idea who you just exposed. Natalie felt a chill. Who? Victoria turned toward the window. Then she said the person behind all of this is not in this room. Before anyone could respond, every phone in the room received the same message. A photograph appeared. It showed Natalie and her newborn son leaving the hospital, taken on the day he was born. Under the photograph were 5 words. We have been watching her. Natalie stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. This time it was addressed directly to her. You think Victoria is the enemy. She is only the door. Natalie looked at Daniel. He had gone completely pale. What is it? Daniel whispered. They found you. Who found me? Daniel looked at the message again. The network. The people Richard and your father spent 12 years trying to destroy. Then the lights went out again. A gunshot echoed from outside. Everyone dropped to the floor. Natalie held her son against her chest. Ethan pulled her behind him. Another shot cracked through the night. Then silence. Daniel crawled toward the window. He looked outside. One of the federal vehicles was on fire. And beside it lay a man. Marcus Hale. Natalie stared in horror. But before she could move, her phone vibrated. A final message appeared. Leave the estate now. Come to the old church. Come alone. And bring the key. Natalie looked at the brass key in her hand. Then she realized something terrifying. The person sending the messages knew exactly what she was holding. And that meant someone inside the estate had been watching her the entire time. Natalie stared at the message on her phone. Leave the estate. Now. Come to the old church. Come alone. And bring the key. Her fingers tightened around the brass key. Someone inside the estate knew exactly what she had. That meant the danger was much closer than she had imagined. Ethan looked at her. What did they send you? Natalie did not answer immediately. Then she turned the screen toward him. Ethan read the message. His expression hardened. You are not going anywhere alone. The message specifically says alone. I do not care. Ethan looked toward the agents. We need to secure this building. One of the agents immediately began giving orders. But Natalie noticed something strange. Daniel was not listening. He was staring at the brass key. Natalie walked toward him. You know something. Daniel looked at her. What? The key? You recognized it. Daniel remained silent. Natalie stepped closer. You knew what was inside before we opened it. Daniel finally nodded. Richard showed me one exactly like it. When 3 days before he died. Natalie stared at him. Why did you never tell me? Because he made me promise. What did he say? Daniel took a slow breath. He said that if you ever received the key, you were not supposed to trust me either. Natalie froze. Ethan looked at Daniel. Why would my father say that? Daniel looked toward the dark window. Because he believed there was a traitor among the people closest to him. Natalie felt a cold wave move through her. And you never told us. Daniel shook his head. I did not know who it was. But you suspected someone. Yes. Who? Daniel looked directly at Natalie. Your father. The room became silent. Natalie felt anger rise inside her. You keep saying my father was involved. But you also keep saying he was trying to protect me. Which is it? Both? How? Daniel opened his mouth. Before he could answer, the emergency lights flickered. A federal agent shouted from the hallway. Everyone move away from the windows. A second later, glass shattered. The agents dropped to the floor. Natalie instinctively covered her baby. Ethan pulled her behind the wall. Daniel crawled toward them. Someone is firing from outside. How many? I do not know. Then another shot. A light fixture exploded above them. The baby began crying. Natalie held him tightly. It is okay. It is okay. Ethan looked at her. His face was different now. There was no arrogance. No anger. Only fear. Not for himself. For them. Daniel whispered. There is a tunnel beneath the estate. Natalie looked at him. A tunnel. Richard built it years ago. Where does it lead? To the old church. Natalie looked at the message on her phone. The church. Of course. They knew about the tunnel. Daniel nodded. That is where Richard hid the final evidence. Then why did the message tell me to go there? Because whoever sent it wants you to believe they are giving you a choice. Natalie looked at Ethan. And if we do not go, they will come here. Daniel nodded. Exactly. The agents secured the hallway. Daniel pointed toward a hidden door behind a bookshelf. Move. Natalie followed him. Ethan stayed close. They entered a narrow staircase beneath the house. The air was cold. Damp. The walls were covered with old photographs. Natalie stopped. There was one photograph of her father and Richard standing together. They were much younger. Between them stood another man. Natalie stared. I know him. Daniel turned. Who? Natalie pointed at the photograph. That man. He was at my wedding. Daniel looked closer. His face changed. No. It cannot be. Who is he? Daniel whispered. Jonathan Vale. Natalie frowned. Who is that? Richard's closest business partner. He died 15 years ago. Natalie looked at the photograph again. Then how is he standing here? Daniel did not answer. They continued through the tunnel. Minutes later, they reached a metal door. Daniel entered a code. The door opened. Inside was a small underground room. A desk. A computer. Several locked cabinets. And a wall covered with photographs. Natalie walked toward it. Every photograph was connected by red lines. Her father. Richard. Victoria. Ethan. Sienna, Marcus, Daniel, and Natalie. She stared at the center. Her photograph was surrounded by dozens of documents. She picked one up. It was dated 12 years earlier. The same year she first met Ethan. Natalie looked at Daniel. Why is my photograph here? Daniel did not respond. She picked up another document. It was an old report about her education. Her university. Her first job. Her movements. Her friends. Her relationships. Everything. Someone had been monitoring her before she met Ethan. Natalie felt sick. Who did this? Daniel looked at the wall. Richard. Natalie turned sharply. What? Richard was watching you. Why? Because he believed someone would eventually use you to reach your father. Natalie shook her head. So my marriage was planned. Daniel looked at Ethan. Not exactly. Ethan stepped forward. What does that mean? Richard knew you would meet Natalie, but he did not know whether you would marry her. Ethan stared at him. Then why did he encourage it? Because he believed you would protect her. Natalie looked at Ethan. Did your father ever tell you about me before we met? Ethan swallowed. Yes. How much? He said you were important. Important how? He never explained. Natalie suddenly understood. The entire foundation of her marriage had been built around secrets. She had thought Ethan had fallen in love with her by chance. Perhaps he had. But someone else had been watching from the shadows long before either of them understood what was happening. Daniel opened one of the cabinets. Inside was a small recorder. He picked it up. This is it. The original recording. Natalie stared. Victoria had stolen a copy. But Richard had hidden the original. Daniel pressed play. Richard's voice filled the room. If Natalie ever hears this, then everything has gone wrong. Natalie held her breath. Richard continued. The person behind the network is not Victoria. It is someone she fears. Someone who has controlled the Carter family for decades. Ethan looked at Daniel. Who? Richard continued. His name is Jonathan Vale. Natalie stared at the photograph. The dead man. But the recording continued. Jonathan did not die. He disappeared. He created a new identity. And he has been controlling the network from outside the country. Natalie's face went pale. Then Richard said something even more shocking. He is not working alone. There is someone inside our family helping him. The recording ended. No one spoke. Ethan looked at Natalie. Who is the person inside the family? Daniel stared at the floor. Then his phone vibrated. He looked at the screen. His face changed. What happened? Daniel slowly showed them the message. It was from Jonathan Vale. You found the recording. Another message appeared. Good. Now bring Natalie to the church. Ethan looked at Natalie. No, we are not going. Natalie looked at him. We have to. Why? Because this is the first time they have asked for me directly. Daniel shook his head. It could be a trap. Natalie looked at the photograph of Jonathan. Everything has been a trap. The difference is that now we know where the trap is. Ethan stepped closer. I am coming with you. The message said alone. I know. Natalie stared at him. Ethan continued. For 6 years, I let everyone else decide what I should believe. My mother, my father, my company, even Sienna. I am not doing that anymore. Natalie said nothing. Ethan looked at their son. I failed you once. I will not do it again. Daniel looked at both of them. Then he picked up the recorder. There is one problem. What? The recording was not complete. Richard had stopped it before revealing the identity of the person inside the family. Natalie frowned. Why? Daniel looked toward the tunnel. Because someone interrupted him. Who? Daniel answered quietly. The recording shows that Richard received a phone call seconds before he stopped. From Victoria? No. From Jonathan. Natalie felt her stomach tighten. What did he say? Daniel looked at the recorder. He said only one sentence. I know where your daughter is. Natalie froze. Her daughter. She had never had a daughter. At least not one she knew about. Ethan stared at Natalie. What does that mean? Natalie shook her head. I do not know. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. A man's voice spoke softly. You finally found the truth. Natalie said nothing. The voice continued. But there is one thing your father never told you. What? Your baby is not the only child your family has been protecting. Natalie's blood ran cold. Who are you? The man laughed. Asked Daniel. The call ended. Natalie slowly turned toward Daniel. He was staring at her. And for the first time since she had met him, Daniel looked terrified. Natalie whispered. What did he mean? Daniel did not answer. She stepped closer. What did he mean, Daniel? Daniel closed his eyes. Then he said the one thing Natalie never expected to hear. Your father had another child. And she is alive. Your father had another child. And she is alive. Natalie could not move. The words seemed impossible. Another child. Her father had another daughter. Alive. Somewhere in the world. Daniel looked at her with an expression filled with regret. I should have told you years ago. Natalie stared at him. Then why did you not? Because your father made me promise. You keep saying that. You keep hiding behind promises. Natalie stepped closer. I am tired of everyone protecting me with lies. Daniel lowered his head. Your father believed the truth would put you in danger. Natalie shook her head. The truth is already putting me in danger. She looked at Ethan. Did you know? Ethan slowly shook his head. No. Natalie looked back at Daniel. Tell me everything. Daniel took a long breath. Her name is Amelia. Amelia Carter. She was born 14 years before you. Natalie felt her knees weaken. 14 years. Why have I never heard of her? Because she was given another name. Why? Because her mother disappeared. Who was her mother? Daniel looked at William. William answered. A woman named Claire Morgan. Natalie searched her memory. The name meant nothing. Claire worked for your father. She was his financial analyst. And she was involved in the investigation. Natalie stared at him. Was she my father's wife? No. Then why would they have a child? William looked away. Because they fell in love. Natalie closed her eyes. Her father had hidden an entire family from her. But that was not the worst part. What happened to Claire? Daniel answered. She was killed. Natalie's eyes opened. When 14 years ago, the same year Amelia was born. Who killed her? We never proved it. But Richard believed Jonathan Vale was responsible. Natalie looked at the photograph on the wall. Jonathan, the man who was supposed to be dead. Daniel nodded. Claire discovered the financial network. She found evidence connecting several powerful people. Then she disappeared. Her body was found 3 days later. And Amelia, your father, hid her. Where? Daniel looked at Natalie. With a family he trusted. She grew up believing her father was dead. Natalie felt tears forming. Does she know about me? No. Why not? Because your father believed that if Jonathan discovered Amelia was connected to you, he would use her to reach you. Natalie looked down at her son. So there are 2 children. 2 daughters. 1 family. Both used as protection. Daniel nodded. But there was something else. What? Amelia is the reason Jonathan came back. Natalie stared at him. Why? Because she has something he needs. What? A memory. Natalie frowned. What kind of memory? When Amelia was 6, she witnessed something. What did she see the night Claire was killed? Natalie felt a chill. She remembers Jonathan. Daniel nodded. She saw him leave the house. She heard him talking to someone, who we do not know. But she remembers one sentence. Natalie waited. Daniel said it slowly. Your father told him he would never give up the list. Natalie felt confused. My father was there, yes. That means he knew Claire was in danger. Daniel looked at her. He arrived too late. Natalie covered her mouth. For years she had believed her father had simply abandoned another woman. Now she understood. He had spent the rest of his life trying to protect the daughter he could not raise. But then another thought came. Where is Amelia? Now Daniel hesitated. That hesitation frightened Natalie. Where is she? She disappeared 3 days ago. Natalie's heart stopped. Well, we lost contact with her. When the same day you left the hospital. Natalie looked at Ethan. Someone took her. Daniel nodded. And we believe Jonathan has her. Ethan stepped forward. Then we find her. Daniel looked at him. That is what he wants. What he wants you to come after her. Natalie understood. Jonathan had created a perfect trap. He knew about Amelia. He knew about the key. He knew about the money. He knew about the investigation. And now he had the one thing that could force Natalie to walk directly into his hands. Her sister. Natalie wiped her tears. Where is the church? Daniel pointed toward the tunnel. 3 miles from here. We go now. Ethan shook his head. No. Natalie looked at him. Why? Because that is exactly what Jonathan expects. Then what do you suggest we make? Him think we are going. Natalie frowned. Then we go somewhere else. Daniel suddenly looked at the recorder. Wait. There is something on the recording. He replayed the final seconds. Richard's voice was faint. If they ever take Amelia. A loud noise interrupted him. Then another voice. Claire. Natalie froze. Claire was alive when the recording was made. Daniel stopped the audio. Play it again. He did. The voice came through clearly. If they ever take Amelia, do not go to the church. Natalie stared at him. Why would Richard say that? Because he knew it was a trap. Then where were we supposed to go? Daniel continued listening. There was static. Then Richard's voice returned. Go to the place where Natalie was born. Natalie froze. I was born in Chicago. Daniel shook his head. Not Chicago. Your mother gave birth to you in a private clinic. Natalie stared at him. I never knew that. Your father changed the records. Why? To hide your identity. Natalie looked at William. Where was I born? William answered quietly. At the old Morgan clinic. Natalie felt a strange sense of recognition. Morgan. Claire Morgan. The same woman who was her half-sister's mother. Daniel nodded. Your father used the clinic as a safe location. Amelia was born there too. Natalie looked at him. So my father wanted us to find each other. Yes. Before he died. Then why did he never tell me? Because he believed you would find Amelia when the time was right. Natalie took the brass key from her pocket. What does this open? Daniel stared at it. The clinic. Natalie frowned. The clinic has been closed for years. Daniel shook his head. Not the public entrance. The basement. There is another room beneath it. A room your father built. Natalie looked toward the exit. Then we go there. Ethan stepped beside her. I am coming. Natalie looked at him. You do not have to. I know. But I am. Daniel picked up the recorder. Then we leave through the tunnel. No phones. No vehicles. No one follows us. They moved through the underground passage. Behind them, the estate remained silent. Outside, the agents continued searching. Victoria was still being questioned. But before Natalie disappeared into the tunnel, she looked back one last time. Victoria stood behind the glass. Their eyes met. For the first time, Victoria did not look angry. She looked terrified. Natalie understood why. Victoria had been protecting a secret. But perhaps she had never been protecting herself. She had been protecting someone else. Someone more powerful. Someone who had controlled her for years. Someone who now wanted Natalie dead. The tunnel door closed. Natalie walked into the darkness. She did not know what waited at the old clinic. She did not know whether Amelia was alive. She did not know whether her father had truly been the hero she now believed him to be. But she knew one thing. She was done running from the truth. And somewhere ahead of her, a woman she had never met was waiting. Her sister. Her family. And possibly the only person who could finally expose the man who had been hiding behind everyone else. Jonathan Vale. But as they reached the end of the tunnel, Daniel suddenly stopped. Natalie turned. What happened? Daniel looked at the door. It was already open. Someone was waiting for them. Then a woman's voice came from the darkness. Natalie. She froze. She knew that voice. Not from memory. Not from a photograph. But from somewhere deeper. The woman stepped into the light. She was holding a photograph. And when Natalie saw her face, she realized something that changed everything. Amelia did not look like their father. She looked exactly like their mother. And Natalie knew that face, because she had been looking at it every day of her life. The woman stepped into the light. Natalie could not breathe. For a moment, she could only stare. The face in front of her was strangely familiar. The same dark eyes. The same gentle expression. The same small curve of the lips. It was the face Natalie had seen in an old photograph hanging inside her father's bedroom when she was a child. Her mother. Natalie whispered. Who are you? The woman held out the photograph. My name is Amelia. Natalie's eyes filled with tears. Amelia looked at her for several seconds. Then she said quietly, You are my sister. Natalie stepped forward. I thought you were missing. I was. Where were you? Amelia looked toward Daniel. Ask him. Natalie turned. Daniel looked down. I found her 3 days ago. Why did you hide her? Because she was being followed. By Jonathan. Daniel nodded. But Amelia interrupted. Not by Jonathan. Natalie froze. Then who? Amelia looked at her. Someone you already know. Natalie felt the familiar coldness return. Who? Amelia handed her the photograph. Turn it over. Natalie did. There was handwriting on the back. A date. A name. And a sentence. Protect Natalie at all costs. The name beneath it was Ethan. Natalie looked up. Ethan was standing behind her. His face had gone pale. I never wrote that. Amelia looked at him. You did not. Your father did. Natalie stared at Ethan. Then back at Amelia. Why would Richard write Ethan's name? Because Ethan was supposed to protect you. Amelia paused. But he was never supposed to marry you. Silence. Natalie felt something inside her collapse. Everything she had believed about her marriage suddenly seemed fragile. Ethan looked devastated. I loved her. Amelia nodded. I know. Then why? Because love was never the problem. Trust was. Natalie turned away. For years she had believed her father hated Ethan. She had believed Ethan had betrayed her. She had believed Victoria had controlled everything. But the truth was more complicated. Her marriage had started with secrets. Her family had been hiding an investigation. Richard had been protecting her. Her father had been protecting Amelia. And someone had been watching both sisters from the beginning. Natalie looked at Amelia. What happened to you? Amelia took a breath. I was raised by people who knew the truth. They told me never to contact you. Why? Because Jonathan believed you were the key to finding the list. Natalie frowned. The list. Amelia nodded. The names of everyone involved. But you said you had a memory. I do. What did you see? Amelia looked at Daniel. Then she said, "The night our mother died, she gave the list to someone." "Who, our father?" Natalie froze. "Our father, yes. Your father kept it. But I thought the list belonged to Richard." "It did." "Then why did our father have it?" "Because Richard trusted him more than anyone." Natalie felt tears run down her face. "Then who betrayed them?" Amelia looked toward the door. "Jonathan. But not alone." Natalie waited. Amelia whispered, "Victoria." Natalie closed her eyes. Everything suddenly made sense. Victoria had not created the network. She had not been the mastermind. She had been trapped inside it. Jonathan had threatened her. He had controlled her. He had used Ethan. He had used Sienna. He had used the company. And when Victoria realized Natalie was getting too close, she tried to destroy the evidence. But why did Victoria never simply kill Natalie? Amelia answered. Because she was afraid. Afraid of what Jonathan told her, that if Natalie died, the list would automatically be released. Natalie stared. "So my father built a protection system?" "Yes. And the brass key activates it." Daniel looked at the key. He suddenly understood. The key is not for the clinic. It is for the server. What server? The old Carter archive. Natalie looked at him. "Where is it?" Amelia pointed toward the room. "Behind that wall." Daniel moved the cabinet. A hidden panel opened. Inside was a computer terminal. Natalie inserted the brass key. The screen turned on. A countdown appeared. 10 minutes. Natalie looked at Daniel. "What happens when it reaches 0? Everything is released. Every document. Every recording. Every name. To who? The world." Daniel looked at her. "News organizations. Federal agencies. Courts. Banks. Everyone." Natalie stared at the screen. Then she understood. Richard had built a final weapon. Not a weapon that killed people. A weapon that destroyed secrets. And Jonathan knew it. That was why he had spent years trying to find Natalie. He did not want her dead. He wanted the key. Suddenly the door behind them opened. Victoria walked inside. Her hands were cuffed. 2 federal agents stood behind her. She looked exhausted. Natalie turned. "Why are you here?" Victoria looked at Amelia. "Because she asked me to come." Natalie frowned. Amelia stepped forward. "I called her." Victoria looked at Natalie. "I owe you the truth." Natalie remained silent. Victoria began to cry. "I was afraid of Jonathan. He threatened Ethan. He threatened you. He threatened Amelia. He told me that if I cooperated, my family would survive. And you believed him at first. Then I became trapped. You moved the money into my name. Yes. You tried to destroy the evidence. Yes. You tried to make me look guilty." Victoria nodded. "I was trying to make Jonathan believe I was still loyal." Natalie stared at her. "You nearly destroyed my life." "I know. You nearly took my child." "I know. And you let me believe Ethan was choosing Sienna." Victoria looked at Ethan. "That part was not planned." Ethan looked at her. "What does that mean?" Victoria lowered her head. "Sienna was Jonathan's daughter." Ethan froze. Natalie stared. What? Sienna was placed near Ethan to monitor him. She was supposed to keep him distracted. Ethan looked sick. So none of it was real. Victoria shook her head. "She did not love you. She was watching you." Ethan closed his eyes. 6 years. He had wasted years believing he understood the people around him. He had been wrong. Natalie looked at him. Then she looked at the countdown. 3 minutes remained. Daniel suddenly shouted, "We have to decide. Decide what? If we release the files, everyone involved will be exposed, including your father." Natalie froze. "What? The files contained evidence of your father's illegal actions too." Natalie stared at the screen. Her father had done terrible things while trying to stop worse people. If she released everything, his reputation would be destroyed. His legacy would be destroyed. But if she did not, the network would survive. Natalie looked at Amelia. "What would you do?" Amelia took her hand. "I spent my whole life waiting for someone to tell me what my father was really like. I do not want you to make the same mistake. Tell the truth, even if it hurts." Natalie looked at Ethan. He nodded. "Do it." She pressed the button. The countdown reached 0. The screen went black. Then thousands of files began uploading. The truth was finally free. Within minutes, phones around the world began ringing. News alerts appeared. Financial markets reacted. Government agencies launched investigations. Powerful people who had spent decades believing they were untouchable suddenly discovered that their secrets no longer belonged to them. Jonathan Vale disappeared that night, but he could no longer hide. His name was everywhere. His network collapsed within weeks. Victoria testified. Marcus survived the shooting. Daniel gave investigators everything he had. And Ethan resigned from Carter Holdings. He sold his shares, and created a foundation using his remaining wealth. Natalie did not go back to him immediately. She needed time. She needed to rebuild herself. And Ethan finally understood that forgiveness was not something he could demand. It was something he had to earn. Months later, Natalie stood beside Amelia at their father's grave. For the first time, the sisters were together. Natalie placed flowers on the stone. "I spent years thinking he abandoned us." Amelia smiled sadly. "Maybe he made mistakes. Everyone does. But he spent the rest of his life trying to fix them." Natalie looked at the grave. Then she took her sister's hand. "We still have a family." Amelia smiled. "Yes." Behind them, Ethan stood quietly with their son. He did not interrupt. He simply waited. Natalie looked at him, then at their child. She knew the past could not be erased. The betrayal could not be undone. But the future was still hers to choose. She walked toward Ethan. Not because everything was forgiven. Not because the pain had disappeared. But because sometimes rebuilding a life meant deciding what deserved another chance. Ethan looked at her. "Are you ready?" Natalie smiled faintly. "Not yet. But maybe someday." And for the first time, he accepted that answer. Because love was no longer about holding on to someone. It was about giving them the freedom to choose. Natalie looked at Amelia, then at her son, and finally at the life waiting ahead. She had lost a husband. She had uncovered a conspiracy. She had found a sister. She had learned the truth about her father. And most importantly, she had found herself. The woman who once believed silence was the price of keeping a family together was gone. Now she knew better. A family built on secrets will eventually collapse. But a life built on truth can survive almost anything. If you enjoyed this story, do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories filled with betrayal, secrets, unexpected twists, and powerful second chances. And tell me, in the comments, if you were Natalie, would you forgive Ethan after discovering everything he had done? Or would you walk away and start a completely new life? I would love to know what you would choose.